Good morning. Round 3 of the Kingies Individual League back at Ehrenbrook, and I've drew back on Match Lake, which I'm really happy about because I was on here yesterday and had a decent day. £78, took a section by default. So I've got a bit of an heads up on how it's going to fish, I hope. So I'll show you the peg. I'm on Match Lake peg 14. I've got Craig Marsden. Yeah? Gives a wave then. Craig Marsden to my right, and to my left I've got Ian Conway. Wasn't Ian Conway? Gives a wave then. And then we got the Ginger Ninja on the end, look. Oh, there goes the whistle. So we'll give it a go and hopefully we'll catch a few fish. Sun's out, happy days. Come on then, let's have it. Too easy on us, you lot. Too right, I've said it now. So like I said, I was on this pool the previous day on the opposite bank, which fished quite well. This bank didn't fish so well unless you were on an end peg. So I had no visions that I was going to beat either of the end pegs. But you never know. The league's over for me anyway. I had a terrible round on round 2. I did try and film it. Well, I did film the first half of the match, but then it absolutely tipped down and ran the second half. But during that first half, I never really caught many fish, so it wouldn't make a very good video. So anyway, hopefully this one will be better. Now, the previous day, like I said, I had £78 and I caught all bar 2 fish on the pole. So I intended to start on the pole today, fishing hard pellets to my left. I'd had 7 or 8 F1s on it the previous day, and I thought maybe I'll get off to a decent start with it again today. A mistake I made the day before was I never fed any maggots until halfway through the match. So my plan for the other line today was to feed maggots from the off via a catapult, and then feed it with a cad pot as well, and just see how it goes, and hopefully try and catch some fish shallow as well. I have got the rod set up, but like I say, I never really caught on it yesterday, so I didn't expect to catch too much on it today. So I've given the pole 20 minutes and I've not had a single indication. And the only 2 people that have caught any fish on the feeder on my bank were the chaps on either end peg. The lads either side of me and the one next up, none of them had had a fish. So there was 4 of us that still hadn't had a bite. So instead of chucking a method or a pellet feeder, I thought I'll have a chuck with a maggot feeder and see if that'll catch me anything. And I gave that 20 minutes as well, 2 or 3 casts, and never had a single indication on it, nor a liner or anything. So I'm thinking, oh dear, already. So I've gone back on the pellet and tried again. And within 3 or 4 minutes, I've hooked a fish. Unfortunately, it was foul hooked and it promptly came off. But at least it was a sign that something was in the area. So we'll give it another go and see if I can catch anything. Unfortunately, next chuck, I had one. Not a very big fish, but it's a fish nonetheless, and it got me off the mark. I'm feeding 4mm fin perfects and fishing a 4mm fin perfect on the hook as well. Like the peg I was on the other week, it's very deep. It's around 7 foot deep, this peg. So I'm using a 4x16 interwire. 50 in. 53 minutes in. And that was the last fish I hooked on that line. So I thought I'd have me a look on the maggot line. I'd been feeding it now for 3/4 of an hour. I'll have a look, see if I can catch anything. And the first fish I hook is a little roach. So I'll keep feeding, putting some in through the cad pot. I'm just using a small cad pot, and I'm also catapulting over the top. I'll still keep feeding that pellet line just in case. I do eventually abandon that line. I'm getting plenty of bites on this line, but it just seems to be a lot of silvers in the peg. So because I'm not sure any of the bait is actually getting to the bottom through a small cad pot, I decided to change that and put a medium cad pot, and I brim it with maggots. So there's quite a few maggots going in through that pot. Plus I'm still catapulting over the top. Next fish I hook's an F1. Putting that bigger cad pot on has definitely helped. There's lots of silvers in this lake. There's lots of perch and lots of roach. So with the small cad pot on, I wasn't quite sure whether enough bait was getting in to actually feed the peg, or whether half of it was getting eaten on the way down by roach and perch. So by putting that bigger size cad pot on, I'm effectively putting 3 times the amount of maggots in. So hopefully some will actually get to the bottom and feed the peg. Fishing double maggot on the hook at the moment. And filling that pot up to the brim. Not sure how many maggots you can get in there, but it is quite a few. And dunking the pot before I put the top kit on the pole, just to make sure that you don't bounce any out as you ship it out. Still getting pestered by roach, but I'm going to persist with feeding this amount of maggots and try and fish through them. because there's not a lot happening other than on the MPEGs. As long as I can keep getting some bait down there, I'm pretty confident that I will catch some F1s. And by loose feeding with a catapult as well, hopefully later in the day, I might catch some shallowfish. The temperature's going up now, and obviously the water temperature will go up as well, so it won't be long before those F1s and carp start moving about, and you'll be able to catch them up in the water. Still filling that to the top. Quick dunk. I also fed the short line with maggots as well. I was umming and ahhing as to whether to feed meat on the short line, but I never had a fish on meat the day before, and I know that area was better than this area, so I thought it'd be a safer option to feed maggots. I'm still getting pestered by a roach. As well as catching some F1s. Unfortunately, this one was fail looked. This one wasn't.
Four fish. Yeah, I got 4 fish. 4 fish. And you got? Hey? I've lost 2.
The 2 MPEGs are catching quite steady, and we in the middle are still struggling. I'm on 4 fish. I think Ash has got 12. And I know Sean Berry on the other MPEG has had a good start on the feeder. But other than them 2, nobody else is catching on this bank. Not consistently, anyway.
Have you got Ash? How many? And I'm bagging, he says. Got 3 times as many fish as me.
It's not exactly quick, but there's still fish to be caught. Because I'm still getting bites off roach, I up the hook bait size to a 3 maggots, all up through the pointy end. That's a size 16 hook, and it still leaves plenty of hook exposed, even with 3 maggots on. So I'm putting 3 maggots on, and I'm still filling that pot to the brim, and still catapulting over the top. I'm still catching fish. With those 3 maggots on, I'm tending to hook more F1s than anything else. Still not catching loads, but I'm putting a few in the net. The previous day I caught some fish late on in 3 foot of water in the last hour. So I found 2 lines, one either side of me today with 3 foot, and I fed one with a bit of ground bait and maggots, and the line to my right I fed with corn and pellets. And I've never had an indication on them lines at all day, which I found a bit strange. But like I said, I don't think there's as many fish on this bank as there is on the other bank at the moment. But there's still fish to be caught out on that 14.5 metre line. I'm having to be a bit patient though. was convinced at some point that because I was feeding with a catapult as well, at some point I would start catching some fish up in the water. I've got a couple of rigs set up. They were both 4x10 F1 maggot floats. One was set at around 4 to 4.5 feet deep, and the other one was set at 3 to 3.5 feet deep. I didn't expect to catch too much shallower than that, but I could always mess about with the rigs once I started fishing them. But while I'm still catching on the deck like this, I'll carry on doing it. I've also upped my elastics now. I'm fishing Duraslip 11, which is the green elastic now. And on the down the edge, I'm using Duraslip 13, the white one. The fish are starting to get a bit more active and a bit more power in them. It just helps you get them in that little bit quicker. On my shallow lines, I'm still using Duraslip 9 because I don't want them splashing when I hook them up in the water. It's not bad fishing, to be fair. It's by no means fast, but a few to be caught. And just as I was thinking it was getting good, I hook a roach. The first roach I've had in a while, this is. That signals the end of the F1s on the deck. This is the second time I've tried the short line. I've never had an indication on either time, which I found a little strange. So I picked up my shallow rig, the deepest first, and went out over the maggot line again. I missed a couple of bites on the 4-foot rig, and that indicated to me that I'm fishing too deep, so I shipped back and put the 3-foot rig on. I've gone in and had one straight away, and I thought maybe there's a few here. But I actually had to shallow up the 3-foot rig as well. In fact, I ended up cutting the 3-foot rig down because they were a lot shallower than 3 foot. They were actually about 20 inches deep, but because it was so bright and flat, they were a bit spooky. So you'd have one or two, and then you wouldn't get a bite for a while. But then you leave it alone for 5 minutes, go back on it, and you'd have two or three again. The water's still quite clear, so they're going to be a bit spooky, I suppose. It's a pity the fish never came shallower earlier. I'm fishing double maggot on the shallow rig and just loose feeding now. It was just nice to be out in the sun with no real wind for a change.
Different world there, Ash. Different world there.
Ended up being a good end to the match. I still had to constantly mess around with the depth as the fish were moving around a lot. And in the last 10 minutes, I had a bit of a disaster and tangled my rig. So while I untangled that, I dropped on the short line just to see if I can catch a fish there while I'm messing about. There's around 8 minutes to go in the match now. And I hook a fish while I'm untangling the rig. This fish ended up being foul hooked in one of his pectoral fins. After I landed this one, I dropped back in and had one more off that line, and they called all out. After I landed these fish, I dropped back in and had one more fish off this line just before they called the all out. Like I say, the league's over for me now, so all I'm hoping for is a match win on one of my last 2 rounds. I certainly wasn't going to get a match win off this peg today. But still nice to be out in the sun and catch a few fish in good company.
We got him. Just in front of his wing. If I was lucky, I'd have your hair be on an end peg.
So that was it. When the scales came round, Sean Berry on peg 11 weighed 110 pounds. He ended up finishing third in the match, I think. Ash Davies on the other end, he weighed 74 pound. Then I was next best weight on that bank with 43 pounds 14 ounces. 23 F1s for that weight. So if you enjoyed watching that video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more like this, please subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
Yeah. That's all I thought of. I'm not caught on anything else. I caught some shallow. Yeah. Can you leave on it?